Hello everyone. So in this lecture we are going to define environment variables in our YAML file and use them in our Lambda function. Now we will also see how we will define them in different ways and how we can refer to those environment variables in different sections of our serverless YAML file, and how we can nest them together and create new variables by combining two more variables. So let's get started. Now if you want to define your variables across your service, let's say you want a variable that you need in all the different functions that you define, so you can do that by defining environment variables under the provider section. So you can define any test variable here and set the value to a string. I'm just gonna call it as test variable value. Now I want to use this test variable in my Lambda function, right? The user Lambda function that we have. So let's go to our code here. Let's change our message to, I'm just gonna put the key as the variable itself, and the value will be process.env dot the key that we set in our serverless YAML file. So anything that we set in the environment here should be available in our Lambda function under the processes environment. Next we want to define a function specific environment variable. For that you can again define your environment property, and then let's say this time I just want it for function scope. So fs is for function scope, and I'm going to set the value to fs. Now this environment variable will only be available for user function under which it is defined, and not to any other functions that we will define. Now let's go back to our user. I'm just going to copy it. So that's it. We should get response from this Lambda function with the environment variable values that we defined in serverless YAML file. So let's go back to console. I'm in my root directory of project tgg2 project, and I want to deploy it. So let's see, I'm going to run sls deploy profile name. That's it. So let's go to our console while the serverless is updating our service here. So here you can see our update of the project is in progress. I just want to show you our Lambda function. So go to resources. So under the resources, let's go to our Lambda function. There it is. So because we added some environment variables under our Lambda function configuration, if you go to environment variable, you will see that those environment variables are set here. So our deployment is done. If I go back to my Postman and try to access the same API once again, this time in our response we are seeing the environment variables available to a Lambda function and then sent back in response. So what if you want to set a default value for your environment variable, right? And you want to be able to override that default value, right? So right now, for example, under provider, we have hard-coded the value of stage, right? But what if you want to use the same YAML template to be deployed in dev, stage, and prod environments? You want to be able to override the stage value when you are deploying your code. So for that, you can override the value of stage by passing the stage option while deploying your code, and then setting the default value as dev. So here you're overriding the value of stage by picking the value of stage option from CLI, but if nothing is passed, you're setting the default value as dev by passing dev as a second argument. Now you can also create new environment variables dynamically by nesting 2 or more variables in your template, or by fetching the value from one of the sources like SSM store. So for example, if you want to set the value of test variable under environment dynamically based on the stage value, you can combine this by using the stages value. So here we are referring to the same YAML file, so I'm going to use self, and then which section you are referring to is provider, and then the variable stage, right? So your test variable will be set to test variable value hyphen whatever is the value of, sorry, made a mistake here, whatever the value of your stage variable under provider. Now let's go and try to deploy it and see that if our changes are reflecting here or not. So I'm going to pass the stage option this time. So here I want to pass the value of stage as, let's say, prod, and deploy it. Now because we are setting the stage value as prod, so this should deploy a new CloudFormation stack for us. Here we'll see there is a new stack deployed here with the name -prod. So this deployment here happens in 2 stages. So if you remember, when we run the deploy command, the serverless framework transforms your YAML file into 2 JSON files, right? First one was to just create the deployment folder, and the next one was to actually deploy your resources and Lambda functions. So here when you create the stack for the first time, the status will change into create in progress, it will get completed, and then it will start the actual deployment where it changes to update in progress. So if I refresh it, you can see the status is update in progress. So the sequence is like it changes to create in progress, then creation complete, then the actual deployment of resources starts, which includes a Lambda function and API gateway. At that point the status changes to update in progress, and then after some time the update will complete, like you can see here. Now it's a new stack, so we'll have a new API gateway endpoint. Yeah, so our new stack is complete. Let's go to API gateway. So we need to just pick up the new endpoint here. Go to post and copy this. So it's a new API endpoint. So if I go to my Postman, let me create a new one. This is for dev. I can add a new request and name it something like create user for prod. It's a post request. That's it. I'm not sending anything. Let's try it. There you go. So this time the test variable is created dynamically by appending the value of stage after the value that we hard coded. So that's it. That's how you can set default values for your environment variables, and you can also combine multiple different variables to create new ones dynamically. In the next lecture we will see some other sources that you can fetch your values for your environment variables from. like AWS SSM store and AWS parameter store.